y'all.
Hey everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of
Smith and Waker,
where we talk about everything motorcycles,
fun,
and women.
And I said,
and we always do it in a different order. Today we're talking about motorcycles.
Yes, specifically about motorcycles. We're going to talk about proper fitment and figuring out which bike would work best for you and what questions to ask when you're buying a bike.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Let's get started.
So I would like to introduce to you Mr. Stephan Smith, our fitment specialist.
Smith.
That
sounds familiar.
So this man.
Stephan, nice to meet you, Stephan.
Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you.
Anyway, this is my husband, and he works for St. Paul Harley-Davidson. I forgot where we were at for a minute. I was so overwhelmed by his handsomeness. And Stephan's going to go over a few bikes with us and kind of answer some questions and tell us a little bit about why different bikes work different for different people and answer some questions that you may have had and haven't asked, or if you're thinking about buying a bike, what you should ask. So let's get started. Hi, Stephan.
Hi.
I'll let you guys make your way back there. Remember in our last episode, one of the things that came up was this idea of whether bikes fit properly. I can't touch the ground. I don't know what things to ask. Stephan is, what did you call him? Our fitment.
I like to say I'm a fit specialist for vehicle sales. So
awesome.
I think one of the things that is my responsibility here at Harley is to make sure that the bike I'm presenting to you, that you're looking at, fits you properly. You know, there's sometimes you have to make some modifications. I find that the fewer modifications you have to make, the better it is. So the bike that you're most comfortable on, when you're sitting on it on the showroom floor or wherever, is normally going to be the bike that I'm going to try and steer you to. You know, I don't like, you know, sometimes you have to lower motorcycles and things like that, but sometimes it's as simple as just getting a different seat on the motorcycle.
Great.
So, so having someone who has some knowledge and experience showing you those things can save you not only a lot of time and a lot of money when it comes to finding the right motorcycle, but also make sure that you're on a motorcycle that you're going to be able to ride and be confident when you're on.
Great. Okay. And I think we bear some responsibility as well, right? We need to go in educated. We need to go in assertive. We need to go in ready to ask some questions, and then knowing, you know, asking questions to figure out what it is you actually want. You can get on a bike and say, I want this big, huge bike, but if it doesn't work for you, that might not be the right bike. And so Stephan's going to tell us about that.
Well, and on the flip side of that too, sometimes we walk into a dealership and we see a bike that we like and we're overwhelmed by its size. And just because it's a bigger bike doesn't mean that it's not the right bike for us. I started on a Heritage. That's the bike I currently ride. Yep. A lot of women are uncomfortable on even a Heritage, which it sits low to the ground. We'll get into all that. But if I would have started on a smaller bike, I wouldn't be riding today.
If I would have started on a 250, we were talking about this morning, I probably would not have been riding. Right. Because that becomes kind of a fun thing to do versus a passion that you do. Right. And when you start to have a bike that feels like it's yours and that you can relate to, then it all makes sense.
Absolutely. Right. Yeah. Absolutely.
So real quick, just a quick disclaimer. You'll notice Monica's mic'd up here and Stephan is mic'd up. I don't have a mic. We're working with a little different setup than we're used to. So if there's some sound issues, we apologize. We're aware. We'll work on it for next time when we do another shop.
No need to give feedback. We get
it. Episode. There it is.
There you go.
All right. So what do we got laid out
here?
Who's
first?
So I've got a couple of motorcycles that I've picked out to kind of show a lot of bikes that I've noticed in my 6 years of doing this, a lot of bikes that fit women better than certain other bikes do, particularly because of having shorter inseams than most men, things like that. Also, newer riders kind of gravitate towards these motorcycles because they are easy to ride and they're an easy fitment for a lot of people. So the first bike I want to show is the XG500. It's a model that Harley no longer has in production, but there's still a ton of them out there. You're going to see them. They're a great entry-level motorcycle. It's got a great entry-level price. You know, one of the cool things about this motorcycle is there's a lot of cool features on it, such as the 6-speed transmission, and you know, it's got a little different engine setup up. It's got what they call the Revolution X engine on it, which makes really good horsepower for the smaller displacement. And with that 6-speed transmission, if you're planning on being on the interstate, things like that, you got that extra gear that's going to allow you to ride the motorcycle and be fairly comfortable on. Why don't you throw a leg over that, Monica, and let me kind of point some things out about this motorcycle. One of them, now it has a really soft suspension on it. It's really good for.
What does that mean, soft suspension?
It's got a lot of give in it, a lot of travel in the suspension for you. It's really designed for like those urban type settings and urban type ride. Okay. You know, so if you're staying close to home, you're not really trying to get, you know, going on those 500-mile rides, things like that. This is a motorcycle. It's great around town. Okay. You know, really good to get started on. Things such as these mid-mount controls. Now, you'll hear a couple of different terms when they're talking about controls on a motorcycle with the foot controls. Mid-mounts are something that I always stress to newer riders as something that's a benefit, because it allows you to stay in more of an upright position and keeping your legs and your hips all in line with the motorcycle. So it allows you to learn how to use your hips to control the motorcycle, kind of throw your hips around and lean the bike over to the side, as opposed to the forward controls where your feet are out in front of you. You know, that's a little bit less stable. But you know, typically whenever you have a motorcycle with those forward controls, you've been riding for a while, and it's something that you find comfortable and are able to do with that confidence. So,
and I think suffice it to say, right, we're talking generally. Right. There's always going to be the exceptions, right? We're talking, you know, I heard you say earlier, shorter inseam. Yes, we know that there are women out there that are 6 feet tall and that have longer inseams than the average woman. We're just talking, generally speaking, women that have shorter inseams. These are bikes that could make sense for them. Doesn't mean there aren't other bikes. We're just saying these are some good ideas.
These are some good ideas. Now, a couple other things about this. This is one of the first. If you've taken one of the Riders Academy classes with Harley-Davidson, this is the motorcycle they use in that Riders Academy. So this is the bike that a lot of people, this is the first opportunity they've had. This is the bike they're going to ride for the very first time. And that familiarity with the motorcycle and everything is something that is very attractive to people. You know, once they finish a rider's class like that with Harley, they'll, you know, a lot of people tend to come in looking for bikes like this. They have a couple of features on them that are really user friendly as far as for a new rider. You know, things like the rubber mounted turn signals and stuff, just in case something, you know, could happen. So my feet. What am I looking for? You're a little stretched on this one. You're a little bit, you know. Now stand the motorcycle up. One of the things I tell people when they're sitting on a bike is you're going to spend more time with your feet on the pegs than you are with your feet on the ground. So if you can be
with
flat,
any luck,
right? If you can be flat-footed while you're sitting on the seat,
you got the bike?
Yep, I got to do it every day. But then you can, you know, then see if somebody can hold the motorcycle up for you and let you put your feet in the riding position, because this is the position you're going to be in for most of the time you're on the motorcycle. And if that's a comfortable fit for you, you know, and picking the bike up off the kickstand, you know, you hear a lot of questions about weight when it comes to a motorcycle, and I think that the better question would be, am I flat-footed? And how easy is it for me to pick the bike up off the kickstand?
Right. So I'll say this one was, and we're not trying to sell a bike necessarily here, although if you want to come in and get one from Stephan and go, feel free. But the whole idea here is that to stand it up, no big deal. I think we talked a little bit about in tips and tricks about making sure that when you're tipping your bike up, if you just turn it, it actually stands up pretty easy if that's part of the problem. But this bike specifically, super easy to pick up. I feel like my knees are still bent, my feet are flat on the ground. Now I do wear a bit of a heel when I ride, so that might make a difference for some people depending on what they have on their boot. What other kind of things can I do? Like, let's say I wasn't hitting the ground. Should we do you want to cover that on some of the bigger bikes?
Yeah, we can do that on some of the other bikes. Now, a lot of the bikes I picked have lower seat heights because I've had a chance. I know you two, and I kind of know. You know, part of my job is to make sure that I'm showing motorcycles that I think are going to be a good fit for you. So these are the bikes that I kind of picked out. So you know, like I said, a lot of times if you weren't quite flat-footed, I would look to see how much of a difference we might need. It might be a ½ inch, might be an inch, and a lot of times you can get that from just changing the seat on the motorcycle, and that doesn't change the dynamics of the motorcycle. When you're just changing the seat, you start changing suspension, you're going to change some of the ride capabilities of the motorcycle. So that's why I always steer towards, let's look at seat options first, and then if we have to, we can go to changing, looking at some suspension options that might give you a little more distance.
When you say suspension options, you're talking about that whole idea of lowering the bike.
Correct.
I hear people talk about.
Correct.
Can I lower
the bike? That's a question I get a lot, and like I said, I've been asked that question a lot of times, and a lot of times I'll take them and we'll throw on a reduced reach seat, which gives you a little extra, gets you down a little bit lower or whatever, and that's all it took to get him, so you didn't have to spend all the money to lower a motorcycle. So another motorcycle that's popular not with many riders, men, women, newer, experienced riders, is the Sportster 883. Now this is an iron 883. I've had one of these motorcycles. I love the Sportster lineup. Again, you have a low seat height on it. It's a little bigger of a motorcycle than the XG family was, but it has some benefits with that is, of course, having a little more power. And one of the things I tell people often is that the bigger bikes sometimes are easier to ride than some of the smaller motorcycles because you have that extra power. It has the ability to correct itself when you're coming out of a turn, or you give it a little on the throttle and the bike will stand up for you. So there's a couple of things that that you can do with these. Another reason why I like the Sportster models so much is they've been making these since 1957. There is a ton of stuff out there for you to customize this motorcycle and make it your own. It's one of the easiest bikes to customize as far as changing controls. If you want to go from the mid-mount controls to the forward control, or if you want to add a windshield or bags or any of that stuff, there's a ton of stuff out there for you to be able to do.
Cool.
Okay.
On this one?
Sure. So
I'll stand next to you here, so that
again,
you can hear.
nice and flat-footed. Again, this bike comes with the mid-mount controls on it, which is something that I talked about on that XG about the stability factor of it as a newer rider. Someone who's been experienced like you, has some experience on a motorcycle, you might want to have a little more room. So that's where you would want to see if we could do some forward controls, something like that for you, so that you can get a little more stretched out. But what I like about the Sportster models is that you can do that kind of stuff fairly easily. Most of the dealerships, have all that stuff available and are able to do it for you. Okay.
now, one thing I noticed on this is that it doesn't have like the same tachometer as some of the other bigger bikes do. So do these tachs, obviously it'll tell you where you're at in your gas and all that, but
most of the newer Harley motorcycles have a digital tachometer. If you don't have a separate tachometer speedometer on there, they have a digital tachometer that's built into the speedometer, into your odometer part of the speedometer. Mm-hmm. So you can cycle through and see your RPMs, what gear you're in, along with your fuel range.
What about what gear you're? Oh yeah, you said.
So yeah, as long as the motorcycle's moving, it'll tell you what gear you're in. When you pull in the clutch, it won't tell you.
Which is normal.
But which is normal because when you have the clutch pulled in, you're not really in gear.
What about engine guards? Can you put engine?
You can put engine guards. You can put engine guards on this motorcycle. Like I said, there's a ton of options for this motorcycle. So customizing this bike to make it fit you is really easy. Or like I said, this is a bike that's really popular with newer riders and some experienced riders. Got people who have been riding motorcycles and are just wanting to get into a Harley. This is an 883, so it's bigger than a lot of the VTX 600s and bikes like that. So this is a step up for some people. Cool. It's a great motorcycle. It's got a really cool look, and it's easy to customize and fits a lot of different people.
Okay.
Great.
What is something that you see a lot of women do, like whenever they get these bikes? What are the most common customizations that they do right off the bat?
It's funny. One of the most common customizations that I see women riders do is normally adding a windshield. That's normally the first thing. That's normally the first thing that a lot of people do, not just women, but a lot of women, a lot of riders, adding that windshield, getting a little more protection from the wind. Something like this, when you're on the interstate, you're going to be hauling, and that windshield kind of takes takes a brunt of that wind that you get, and it makes it more comfortable for you over a longer distance. So that, and then you have that 50-50 with the controls, with the forwards and the mid controls. So some people who have longer inseams like having their legs out and having a little, they feel a little scrunched up on the mid mount controls. So you'll see a lot of people that will opt to go and move those controls forward so they can get a little more stretched out.
What kind of gas mileage would I get on this bike? Like, how far could I go on a tank?
With that size tank, you're looking, it's a 3.5 gallon tank. It depends on your riding style. I've taken back roads and gotten well over 120 miles out of a tank of gas on this motorcycle. Yeah. When you're on the interstate, it is a 5-speed transmission, so it does work a little harder on the interstate. So your gas mileage typically kind of goes down whenever you're on the interstate on one of these.
So
and some people rev their engine constantly.
Right.
So.
Just under
I hear it. Every time we go under a bridge.
I just have to let you know I'm there. So this being a 6-speed, the XG500, and this 883 being a 5-speed, the 500 would probably get better gas mileage, and that looks like a bigger tank.
That is a little bigger tank. It is a little bigger tank. The extra power that this motorcycle has, I look at torque as kind of a safety feature. Torque is what helps you accelerate. So when you're going from 60 and got to pass something and you got to speed up to 75 to get around that truck, this bike's got a little more torque than that motorcycle does. So there's a kind of a trade-off there. But both of these motorcycles are excellent motorcycles in my opinion.
Okay, cool. So if I was a beginner motorcyclist coming in all excited that my girlfriends are riding and I get to go ride with them, and I don't know that I'm comfortable on the Sportster because I've heard it's top heavy.
Well, my question to you was, how did it feel when you picked it up? Did you feel like you could? Did you feel confident that you could handle it?
Yeah.
When let's throw our feet up on the pegs and let's see how you fit. Yeah.
Why you were a little bit like, whoa.
I do this every day.
Oh.
So. So you're a little crunched up on it, you know what I mean? So you'd be one of those people that might want to do some forward controls on it if that's the case.
Can you do floorboards on it?
Not really.
Oh, okay. So
you can do some mini floorboards.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. But knowing that you have a little bit of experience, you have some experience riding, and seeing that, well, why don't we see what soft tails might fit you, and see which ones you're comfortable on that. So
I have a fear about setting a bike over in the kickstand feeling, so I'm always making sure. Okay, I noticed something. You called it a soft tail. Is that because you don't see the suspension?
That is correct.
Okay.
Now this is one of the newer Softail models. This is the Softail Slim. Really cool about this motorcycle. This has the lowest seat height out of all the big twin motorcycles, all the bigger engine Harley-Davidsons. So your non-Sportsters, your Softails and your touring bikes, this one's got the lowest seat height out of all of them. And they call it a Softail Slim because it's really slim in the saddle. It's kind of narrow in the saddle, which keeps you from having to have your legs too far apart, so wide apart. And the closer you can keep your legs when you're sitting on the motorcycle, the more distance they can travel. So on a bike like this, it's a little easier to be flat-footed, especially if you have that shorter inseam that we had been talking about.
That's a pretty bike too.
Yeah, it's red. Of course it's pretty.
I picked this one just for you. Now, cool thing about this motorcycle, though, is this has the same engine as a lot of the touring bikes. So if you're riding in a group, you got the same power plant that a lot of the bigger Road Kings type motorcycles, the Street Glides and stuff. You got a very similar, if not the same size engine as that. This is the same engine that's in my 2017 Road Glide. Sure. So when it comes to keeping up, or you're not going to feel like you're being left behind. You have the same kind of horsepower and torque that those other bikes do. So and again, you can customize this bike and make it fit. Easy to make it fit you. It offers a little bit more comfort than some of the other models, because you do have the things like the floorboards, like Molly was asking about. You do have this 6-speed transmission on it, so on a longer ride, something like that, you're gonna have a lot more comfort on a bike like this. And again, my question to any rider who is telling me how it's first motorcycle, or I haven't ridden in a long time, or first thing I want to ask you is, how does this feel?
So here's a question I have for you. It was easy to lift. They say slim, but I actually feel like it's wider, and I think it's just because of the way I sit, or maybe it's just an illusion because it has such a wide tank. But here's another question I wondered about fit. My hands, I feel like I'm leaning forward to get to it, and that's just because I'm so short here. Is there anything you can do in that area?
The two things that you could do, one, of course, you can always put different handlebars on a motorcycle, kind of raise them up, bring them back to you type deal. Now, a less expensive way to also achieve something like that would be something like that reduced reach seat, because it pushes you forward a little bit, so it slides you up a little bit, and as long as you were still comfortable on it, then you might not feel like you're reaching so far.
Yeah.
So
I mean, even just to slide myself up a little bit, right? If I got a little,
that
raise
reduced
in the back.
reach seat pushes you forward and drops you down just a tiny bit. So
doesn't Harley offer the ability to try seats out?
Yes, they do. They have a demo seat program, and you have to check with your local dealer. I know we offer it here at this dealership,
Sure.
But a lot of dealerships have a demo program with the seats. So
cool. And I always double check the kickstand, and I tend to put my foot against it when I'm in the delership, just in case. Yeah. All right.
So out of these bikes that you're showing us, which ones have anti-lock brakes, and why is that important?
Now that's a good question, because some of these motorcycles do not have ABS standard on them. But most, if not all, the motorcycles that Harley makes, ABS is an option. So, the Iron 883. The Iron 883 over here, this particular one does not have ABS. Now we have several that do have ABS, and if you are wanting a bike that has ABS, ask your specialist. Ask your fit specialist about it to, just to make sure that the bike you're getting has the features you're looking for.
All right, we're having a camera change real quick.
So I'm going to talk from behind the camera here. So let's see, where am I? Okay, so I think we're looking at the Heritage next.
Yes, so the next bike is the Heritage Softail Classic.
Molly, does this look familiar to you?
It does look a little bit familiar. I heard a Heritage.
There you go.
This is a great motorcycle. It's really comfortable. It's probably the biggest of the Softail motorcycles that are out there. What's nice about it is it does give you the touring capabilities along with a nice sized motorcycle for in-town riding. So I like to say this motorcycle is kind of the jack of all trades. You can you can go from here in Minnesota to Tulsa, Oklahoma and back on a motorcycle like this and do it within comfort. It offers a lot of cool things like bags and the windshield, and that's what's really nice about it is this is a motorcycle that even though you can do some customization on it, you don't really have to do a whole lot to it, depending on what you're planning to use it for. If you're wanting to go on longer rides, things like that. The newer Softail models are a lot lighter off the kickstand than what the old Softail frame that Harley had. So I'm finding that more and more people are able to ride these bikes regardless of their better riding experience. You know, it's a lot easier for them to pick them up, for people to pick them up off the kickstand, which makes, you know, which gives them a little bit more confidence to hop on something that maybe in the past would have intimidated them a little bit because of the size of the motorcycle.
So I have a question. My bike used to have a plate right here on the primary. This is called the primary, right? That said 103, but I replaced that. What does this 114 mean?
This one is the Heritage Softail Classic Special with the 114 cubic inch Milwaukee 8 power plant. So this motorcycle has has the same engine in it that the Street Glide Specials do right now, the Road Glide Specials, your Ultra Limiteds. You know, this has that same power plant on a smaller frame. So, you know, great weight to power ratio. The bike has plenty of acceleration. It's got a lot of cool features like cruise control. ABS is standard on this motorcycle. So, you know, there's just a lot of cool safety features like the LED headlamps and fog lamps that are on it. You know, it's a really nice motorcycle, and it fits a lot of people because it does have that light center of gravity to it, really low seat height for it, so it's easy to be flat-footed on, and you don't have to put a whole lot into it. You don't have to do a whole lot of extras as far as adding bags or a windshield or any of that stuff. I tell people all the time, you know, the only thing I would do to this motorcycle is maybe throw an engine guard on it so I could put some highway pegs on it, and then I'd be off on the road.
Awesome.
Okay, nice. And finally,
and last but not least, the Street Glide. This is a 2021 Street Glide Special.
Okay, it looks similar to mine. Mine's not 2021.
Similar to what Monica is riding. And the reason why I picked these two motorcycles is because these are the two bikes that you guys ride on now. Right. You know, Mollie started with a Heritage. You had started with the Sportster, and now you're on a Street Glide.
Right.
You know, and part of that, you got your confidence on the Sportster.
Right.
And now that you were confident, you wanted to try something bigger, and you went to a Street Glide. Throw a leg on it, and I'll show you the things that I would have looked at while, you know, I would have helped you with when you were looking for your motorcycle.
I'm always careful too about getting on a bike in a shop too, because I never want my boots to hit anything. On my own bike, it's my thing. But on your bike, it's something else.
So, again, you want to stand that motorcycle up, and let's see how's that feel standing up. Of course.
So this is super familiar to me. I mean, for the most part, it's the same as what I already have. But I love it. So
yeah.
It fits great.
It fits great. So,
you guys want to just hand one over? I'll take it.
Well, awesome. You know, like I said, you know, things that I'm looking for whenever I'm showing newer riders, even experienced riders, is fitment. You know, are you flat-footed? Do you feel comfortable? Was it a struggle for you to pick the motorcycle up? If all those things are a no, then we're going to check and see how the riding position is for you, if that's comfortable, you know what I mean? And then, you know, of course, we'd get into the other features and benefits that the motorcycle offers,
sure.
Like the radio and the GPS and stuff that's on this one.
So I know when I bought mine, I felt like I was talking about on the Softail, that I was straight armed, and I don't know if it's true or not, but one of the things I was always told is that you should have a little bend in your elbow when you've got your hands on your
steering wheel?
Steering wheel.
On your handlebars?
Handlebars, thank you. So I actually went with a little bit higher handlebar, and then I had them tipped a little bit toward me so that I didn't have so far of a reach, which was super comfortable for me.
Right, absolutely. And there's a lot of, I mean, there's so many different options that you can do. So make sure that you know, if there's something that you're not 100% comfortable with, make sure you say that to whoever's helping you.
Sure.
Because, like I said, it's my responsibility to put you on the right bike and to make sure that you have everything you need to have so that you will be confident and excited to ride your motorcycle.
Right.
So if doing some different handlebars and kind of getting, you know, doing those pullback style handlebars, getting your arms up and pulling them back towards you is what you needed to be comfortable on that, let's get that handle down so that when you pick up your motorcycle and you ride off, you don't have anything that you wish you would have done.
Sure.
You know?
So could the handlebars that are on here, or even on the Heritage, Isn't there an adjustment thing in there where you can
Not per se.
It does on my bike.
There's not, certain bikes you can kind of adjust them and tilt them and do some things like that, like on the Heritage. A bike like this, you kind of got to get into the fairing to do a lot of that stuff. I wouldn't recommend anyone doing that. As a dealership, there's not as much clearance on a bike like this as there is on a bike like that one because of the fairing. So, you have to be cognizant of those kind of things when doing it. That's why I would always recommend asking your dealer and talking to your dealer about it, because they're the ones that can steer you in the right direction. And we have a responsibility to make sure that we don't allow you to compromise anything on your new motorcycle.
Sure. I know one of the things I learned when I got my handlebars was that I didn't pay attention to, and that I learned that, for the next time around, is that because I went with a little bit higher rise on it, now my hands were above my fairing, which now the wind now hits your hands, so your hands can be a little colder now, and then I had to get new mirrors because at that time the mirrors were mounted in the fairing.
They still are. This bike actually has a little taller handlebars on it.
they were even. I think mine were. I know it sounds.
Somebody had asked.
They were 13s.
Somebody had asked me that question though about this exact same motorcycle just yesterday. They had mentioned it. And he was like, "Oh, why did they take those off?" And I explained to him, well, when you put those taller bars on, your hands obstruct the mirrors that are in the fairing here.
Yeah.
So if you were to go this height, you want to put something on the handlebars so that you can still have mirrors on it and still use them.
For sure.
So that's why we do that. Whenever we do handlebars on a motorcycle like this, we typically change those mirrors just to make sure that you still have the full function of those mirrors.
So I think what I heard through all of these bikes, there were some common themes, right?
Well, I did have a question before we summarize. So I know Harley has the opportunity where you can test seats. Do they also have an option to test handlebars?
Not really, because there's a lot of labor that goes into doing handlebars.
These ones,
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of labor that is involved with changing the handlebars, and it really depends on the bikes, and some bikes are a little easier to do than others.
Yeah.
So
I will say, when I got my handlebars, one of the things they did for me, because I also got engine guards and highway pegs, and I came in, and while it was still on, I think what they called the rack back there, while it was still being worked on,
the bench.
They had me climb up on it, and then I could then put my feet up, and was that comfortable? And they would adjust it right then and there. I'm not sure if
that's one of the things that, a lot of times I've done. I've been working here for a while, and anytime we've had anybody do handlebars on their motorcycle, our service department does a really great job of getting in touch with them as their bike is on the bench, and inviting them in to make sure that we position the bars in the proper position for them. We did that just the other day for a customer of mine, and got his bars in the right position and everything. And I just think that's awesome that our service department makes sure they do that with people.
I mean, I can't imagine.
I can't speak for every dealership, but like I said, I know here that's something that's really important to us.
I can't imagine getting what you think is adjusted. You pick it up, you get out on the road, and it's not what you want. So take the time to go in, and be picky about it. You're paying money to have it done right.
Right, absolutely.
So these highway bars are a lot different than the ones I'm used to seeing. Are these?
That's a new style that they started doing on the specials. It's a more custom look on that motorcycle.
Because they're a little bit different.
That's a chopped engine guard. It's just a little lower profile. It just makes the bike.
You can use some of your highway pegs too.
Now that's similar to the mustache bar. They don't have the rubber mounts, the rubber pads on there like a lot of the mustache engine guards do.
Throw a pool noodle on it. You'll be.
So don't do that. No.
You can. It turns out it's your bike. You can do whatever you want.
Right. But no, it does have a little lower profile than the old style engine guard, and it's only on a couple of models.
If I'm a new rider and I come in, and I have never ridden a bike before, what's the best thing I could ask you to let me jump on?
Well, We have the Jump Start over there. The Jump Start is, we have an XG500 on the Jump Start. It's similar to like a manually powered dyno machine. So it allows the back tire to spin, and you can kind of go through the gears a little bit and kind of see how the throttle and the clutch work on a motorcycle without, it's stationary so it doesn't move, and so it kind of gives you that little bit of feel and a little familiarity with the bikes. And then typically what I would do is I would start with that exact model if we had one on the floor, and then work my way up and see what fits best for you and what you're most comfortable on, and and find out what we need to do to make that happen for you. The other thing that I do with a lot of new riders is safety is very important to me. After watching you start riding, and now we have our two boys that ride. I rode for a long time and never really thought about safety. I think I had mentioned that in our Valentine's episode. With new riders, I want you to be a rider for a long time, and I want you to be safe while doing so. So I always encourage them to talk to our motor clothes associates up front and get fitted for the proper stuff. Get fitted for a helmet so that you know why you want your helmet to fit a certain way, and see what size you actually need, and not just think of it as trying to save money, because you can't put a price tag on safety. So make sure that the gear you get, the riding jacket, the gloves, the helmet, the boots, make sure that it's proper for what you're trying to do. I really think that's more important. That's as important as being on the right motorcycles, having all the proper gear.
Yeah. That's great. Cool.
So to summarize,
what do you want to say?
I guess it really, depending on your confidence and how you feel whenever you sit on a bike, is really kind of depends on which bike that you really want to ride and that you really want to start with. There's not a my teenage son is filming this right now. He's trying to make me laugh, which isn't hard to do. Thank you, Isaac, for filming this, by the way. I started on my Heritage, and I was a confident rider on that, like we talked about. You started on a Sportster. Just because you're a new rider doesn't mean you have to start on the smallest bike available.
Absolutely, but if that's what you need to feel comfortable, by all means, we don't judge anybody as far as if we see you out on two wheels, that's awesome. We just want to encourage you to continue riding and to ultimately get the bike of your dreams, and that something that you're going to be happy with for a long time. That's kind of the way I look at it.
Now, you touched base a little bit on a Road King, and something that I didn't realize whenever I first started riding and learning about bikes was that a Road King is the same, which we don't have any right now, or we'd show you. A Road King is the same frame as a Road Glide, just without the fairing. Is that right?
Correct. They're the Street Glide. It's part of the touring family. So the families with Harley-Davidson, the different families are referring to the frames more so. So you have several bikes they'll be called Softails. All those bikes have the same frame. They're all roughly the same size. There's a little variance in size on them, but they're all roughly the same size. They're more of our mid-size lineup. Your touring bikes are the bigger bikes, and from the Trike to the Road King, they're all part of the same, have the same frame or same basis for the motorcycle. So like I said, from the neck back, the meat and potatoes are all the same. It's just the front and some of the window dressings on the motorcycle that are different.
Okay. Well, do you have anything else you want to add?
I was just going to say, so first of all, thanks.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you for all.
Thank you, ladies, for having me over here.
Of course. I think to summarize, I think what I heard was, one, if you want a new bike, go sit on some. We see that on the women pages, the women rider pages all the time. What's the best bike? The only way you can tell is to go sit on it. My inseam is different than Mollie's inseam. Let's be honest, the spread of my legs is different than the spread of Mollie's legs, so the bikes fit differently. You have to go put your butt on them, and you have to stand them up, and you have to ask for help.
And take advantage of the Jump Start. If you've never ridden a bike, just go into a dealership and ask if you can try that out, because that's going to tell you a lot about your riding, your riding style, and how you sit on some of these bikes too, I think, especially when they're in motion, even if they're not in motion.
Yeah. So if you think you need a different fit, think about handlebars, think about seats. Tons of options for seats. We didn't
of your controls.
Yep. We didn't talk a lot about raising and lowering. We mentioned it a little bit, but there are some like physical changes you can make to the bike to allow for it to be a little bit lower.
Right, and like I said, I try to avoid doing that at all costs, because it changes the dynamic of the motorcycle a little bit.
Yeah.
The lean angles, things like the travel and the suspension and stuff. So, if you have to lower it, I understand, and it can be done. It can be done, but look at other options before you just jump into lowering it, because like I said, sometimes just putting a different seat on it and wearing a taller heel on your boot will get you flat-footed to the point where you're comfortable on that motorcycle.
We're not saying stilettos.
No, we're not saying no, and I'm not even referring to the heels you have on. I'm just saying you have some boots that have thicker soles than others. So, sometimes just wearing a boot that has a little thicker sole on it and having like a shorter seat that changes the sitting position will get you in the right position and get you is all it takes.
Yeah.
So you just want to be just want to make sure you look at all the options.
Sure.
I liken it to if your car's not starting because your battery's dead, you don't go and change the alternator. You go and charge the battery first.
Right.
And then you see. Yep. So it's the same principle. You look at the most cost efficient way to do something before you go in and make a major change on the motorcycle.
Okay.
Perfect.
Awesome.
So. Super helpful.
Very helpful. Thank you very much.
We hope that you think it's as helpful as we hope you think it's as helpful as we do.
Yes, that. And so on our next episode.
Yeah, next episode.
We're going to talk to a finance manager about some helpful hints to ask about whenever you're financing a bike, some of the things that you can do to protect your investment on your bike, like an extended service warranty. They have service plans that you can do, gap insurance, theft protection, I think, is one of them. What did you say?
Nothing.
Oh, so be sure to tune in, because some of that stuff really applies across the board if you're looking for motor vehicles in general.
Yeah, we were just talking about that the other day.
Yeah, so thanks so much for tuning in. We hope you found this helpful.
Yeah.
So keep it shiny.
Signing out, Smith and Waker.
Out.
See ya.